People say that Nintendo's removal of gambling from Pokémon games was to protect children. But here's the thing. Nintendo didn't really remove gambling from Pokémon to protect kids. They removed it because it was amateur hour compared to what they had planned. Today, I wanted to hold a magnifying glass up to the Pokémon company's blatant hypocrisy when it came to solving their gambling problem. They took a system where you could see exactly what you were buying, exactly what it cost, and it didn't cost any real money, and they replaced it with something so predatory that it made actual casinos look ethical. Let's start with what the Game Corner actually was, because I think a lot of people have either forgotten or never really understood how this location worked in the first place. The Game Corner was fundamentally a casino. Let's not dance around it. It was a building full of slot machines where you could gamble your virtual coins for prizes. It was a casino. But here's what made it different from what we have today. It was honest about what it was. When you walked into the Celadon Game Corner in Pokemon Red and Blue, you saw exactly what you were getting. Slot machines. That's it. No hidden mechanics, no complex currency exchanges, no psychological manipulation techniques refined by decades of mobile game research, just slot machines. To even participate, you needed a coin case, which you got for free from a guy in a restaurant. And to top it all off, the prizes were clearly displayed with exact costs. Want a Porygon? That'll be 9,999 coins in red, 6,500 in blue. Want Hyper Beam? 5,500 coins. No mystery boxes, no chance to win, no limited time offers, just a straightforward transaction. This many coins for this specific thing. You didn't even have to gamble. You could just exchange enough Pokédollars to coins, bypassing the slots entirely, and get your Porygon the way God intended it. Now, compare that to modern Pokemon mobile games, where you've got Pokecoins, and Premium Passes, and Battle Points, and Stardust, and Candy, and Rare Candy, and Super Incubators, and you get the idea. The Game Corner had one currency: coins. You could see how many you had, you could see how much things cost, and you could make an informed decision. The games even framed the Game Corner as morally questionable. It was run by Team Rocket after all. The building literally had a secret underground hideout where the villains were conducting illegal activities. The game was telling you pretty explicitly that this place was sketchy as fuck. Now, some NPCs even warned you about gambling addiction. The aforementioned guy who gave us our coin case lamented how he lost all his money. The game presented gambling as something problematic, something that the bad guys were involved in. But the Game Corner wasn't just a one-off thing in Kanto. It appeared in Johto, it appeared in Hoenn, it appeared in Sinnoh. The Sinnoh slot machines had bonus rounds, special symbols, progressive jackpots that were starting to look less like the simple slot machines and more like the kind of thing you'd find in a modern casino. Which brings us to why they disappeared. Because by the time Diamond and Pearl came out, rating boards around the world were starting to take a closer look at what exactly was happening in these game corners. Generation 4 is where things got a touch problematic from the regulatory standpoint. The Veilstone Game Corner had these elaborate bonus games where you had to keep a Clefairy happy by stopping the reels in the right order. It was engaging, it was fun, it was starting to look a lot like the kind of psychological manipulation techniques that modern gambling uses. Which is exactly why it had to go. Because by 2007, rating boards around the world were starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, having literal slot machines and games marketed to children wasn't the best look. Here's where we get to the whole meat and potatoes of this thing. Let's start with Pokemon TCG Pocket because it's the most recent, and let's be frank, the most egregious example at the moment. This game has at least 12 different currencies. 12. At the minimum. Let's list some for you. Pack points, shop tickets, Wonder Hourglasses, Shine Dust, Pack Hourglasses, Pokegold, Event Hourglasses, Rewind Watches, Special Shop Tickets, Trade Tokens, Emblem Tickets, oh, and good old-fashioned money. The old Game Corner had one. Coins. You could count them, you could see them, you could understand them, but 12 currencies? That's gonna get a bit confusing, yeah? Yeah, this is what the mobile game industry calls currency obfuscation. The more currencies you have, the harder it is for players to track their spending. and therefore the easier it is to manipulate them into making purchases they wouldn't otherwise make. Let's touch on Pokémon Go. So Pokémon Go has a system where you can hatch eggs to get random Pokémon. To hatch eggs faster, you can buy incubators. Each incubator costs real money and breaks after 3 uses. A regular incubator costs 150 Pokecoins, which is about $1.50. Super incubator costs 200 Pokecoins, which you guessed, $2. Each one breaks after 3 uses, so they're paying 50 to 75 cents per egg for the privilege of maybe getting something good. But the kicker is you don't know what's in the egg. You don't know the odds. You don't know if you're gonna get a common Pidgey or a rare regional exclusive. You're literally paying money at a random chance at getting something that you want. The Game Corner told you exactly what you could win and exactly how much it would cost. Want a Dratini? Great, 2,800 coins. No randomness, no mystery, no surprise mechanics, just a straightforward transaction. But Pokémon has embraced gacha mechanics and the psychological manipulation techniques used in modern gacha games make the old slot machines look like child's play. There's actual research showing that these modern mechanics are more addictive than traditional gambling. A study by Dr. Luke Clark at the University of British Columbia found that loot box mechanics activate the same neural pathways as slot machines, but with additional psychological hooks that make them even more compelling. And the spending statistics are insane. The average mobile game player spends $87 per year on in-app purchases, but the top 1% of spenders, the whales, spend an average of $1,800 per year. Some spend tens of thousands. The entire business model is built around finding and exploiting people with gambling problems. Horribly, there are documented cases of children spending thousands of dollars on mobile games without their parents knowing. One example, in 2020, a 6-year-old spent $16,000 on mobile games in a single month in a game of Sonic. These aren't isolated incidents, they're inevitable results of a system designed to extract maximum money from vulnerable players. Modern mobile games are designed to never let you stop. Daily login bonuses, limited time events, battle passes, social features that show you what your friends are doing. Everything is designed to keep you engaged and keep you spending. And this isn't accidental. Mobile game companies employ teams of psychologists, behavioral economists, and data scientists to optimize their maximum spending. They A/B test different psychological manipulation techniques to see which ones extract the most money from players. And all of this is legal because it's not technically gambling. The rating boards that force Nintendo to remove the Game Corner don't consider loot boxes or gacha mechanics to be gambling. The ESRB officially states that loot boxes are not gambling because the player is always guaranteed to receive in-game content. Even if it's worthless, even if it's not what you wanted, you technically received a digital item in exchange for your money. It's like saying slot machines aren't gambling as long as when you lose, they print you out a ticket with an unhappy face on it. Nintendo removed gambling from their games because regulators said it was inappropriate for children. Then they replaced it with opaque, unlimited, manipulative gambling with real money that's specifically designed to exploit children, and somehow this is considered progress? The gaming industry didn't solve its gambling problem. It professionalized it. In 2023, mobile games generated $92.2 billion in revenue. That's more than movies, music, and traditional video games combined. And the vast majority of that money comes from what are essentially gambling mechanics that have been rebranded as games. The industry learned that the problem wasn't gambling, it was calling it gambling, so they invented new terms. It's the same psychological manipulation, the same exploitation of vulnerable people, just with better marketing. And it worked. Regulators around the world have largely bought into this distinction. The same rating boards that forced Nintendo to remove slot machines from Pokémon now give family-friendly ratings to games with far more predatory monetization systems. The industry's response to the regulation is always the same: just move the goalposts. When Belgium banned loot boxes, companies just changed the mechanics slightly. Instead of buying loot boxes directly, you buy currency that you use to buy loot boxes. Problem solved, according to the lawyers. Hooray. Meanwhile, children are spending unprecedented amounts of money on these games. A 2022 study found that 40% of children aged 10 to 16 had spent money on loot boxes. The average amount spent was $39, but 5% of children spent over $100. A study by the University of Plymouth found that children who engage with loot box mechanics are far more likely to develop gambling problems later in life. The industry's defense is always the same. It's not gambling, it's gaming. But that distinction is becoming increasingly meaningless when the mechanics are identical and the psychological effects are the same, if not worse. The game corner was removed because it was too honest about what it was. It looked like gambling, it felt like gambling, and it was clearly identifiable as gambling. It was gambling, and that made it easy for regulators to target. But modern mobile games have learned to hide their gambling mechanics behind layers of obfuscation. Multiple currencies, complex progression systems, social features, narrative justification, anything to make the gambling less obvious. But it didn't have to be this way. I mean, imagine instead of removing the game corner in a better timeline, Nintendo might have built on that. Not by turning it into a money machine, but maybe using it as a narrative tool. A chance to teach kids why gambling can be dangerous, to use world building to critique the very thing it was simulating. But why educate children when you can exploit them, hey? Unfortunately, instead we got Pokémon TCG Pocket, a game that makes $6.4 million a day. A game that's specifically designed to extract maximum money from children using techniques that would make casino operators blush. Look, the game corner wasn't good. It was gambling, and removing it was the right call. But what we got instead was something slicker, shinier, built from the ground up to manipulate, and it makes more money than the Pokémon company could ever imagine back then. But they can still pat themselves on the back. They can role play as the heroes, pretend they fixed a problem when all they really did was rebrand it. They didn't remove gambling, they removed the optics. They made the actual problem so much worse, and then acted like they were doing us all a favor.